Hello, hello. Welcome to the GRACED podcast, where we talk about how we can infuse more everyday magic into your everyday life through rituals, wellness, tarot, creativity, and so much more. Today's guest is none other than AdamJK, an author and artist whose illustration style is rooted in honesty, humor, and as he describes it, sometimes a little bit dark. I find Adam's work so relatable because oftentimes it's thoughts that you're thinking but not actually saying. Adam is also the artist behind the OK Tarot and It's a Sign Oracle deck. And today we dive into the themes of the Fool card and his creation process behind his decks. We talk about uncertainty and pushing ourselves beyond our comfort zones, even if it's a little bit scary. Like the Fool card, leaping off the cliff into the unknown and trusting that the universe has your back. If you want a deeper dive into what his deck is all about, you can check the unboxing video I did of his OK Tarot deck on my YouTube channel, linked in the show notes. Also, we are doing a special giveaway of 3 of Adam's OK Tarot decks. But you'll have to listen through to the end of the episode to find out how to enter. Hot tip, follow us on social media and find out the rules of how to enter to win an OK Tarot deck through there too. All right, now let's get into the episode. Hey Adam, how's it going?
Hi, thanks for having me on the podcast. It's going really great.
Awesome. I'm so glad you're here. And today we're going to be diving into the themes around the Fool card, which is all about leaping into the unknown, going into the next adventure of life without necessarily knowing what's going to happen on the other side, and really trusting in the universe that everything is going to be okay. And this is something I think that you're really great at. You know, whether it's taking the leap into your own personal work, encapsulating really complex emotions into really simple, relatable, funny, sometimes dark, relatable. Did I say that again?
It's relatable. Listen, we're relating.
Totally relating. And I just feel like what you do, speaks to a lot of people because you're able to capture things that people might not be comfortable saying. So I kind of just wanted to talk about, what does taking the leap mean for you, and how do you trust yourself to make these big decisions for yourself?
So I don't always know that I do trust myself, but I think what I trust in is just that it doesn't matter if you fuck up. And historically in my own life, I've fucked up many times, and then people don't notice, or they do, or like the fucked up version is somehow like the most popular work I've ever made that ends up like changing my life. So I think that there's a lot of times when you don't need 100% trust. You need like 90% trust, and then I don't know, 10% like intuition / like stupidity, right? You need to be you need to be the fool. You need to be like a little bit dummy dumb. Let me, apple in my little stick bag thingy, because I'm on the journey and I don't know what I'll need, but I bring my tools with me. And yeah, I don't know. It's so early in the podcast to tell your listeners that I don't know what the fuck I'm doing, but I don't, and I never have.
I mean, that's the secret sauce to a lot of things, right?
I think the secret sauce is maybe just embracing your own reality. And so some people really do know what they're doing. And then they kind of downplay and they're like, oh, I don't know. It's like, no. Just own your shit. Whatever your shit is, own it. So I own what I'm good at, but I also really, really own not having necessarily a plan, not really knowing where I'm going next, not really knowing how to do something until I like start and then kind of do it wrong and then figure it out as I go. And when you own that for yourself and when you make that true for yourself, then it's a lot easier to take the leap and to jump and to trust, because you're like, well, yeah, I don't know. True. I acknowledge the truth of that, but I also acknowledge that I have some tools, skills, resources, friends. I can just try and hope for the best. And like, if I fuck it up, it's fine. I'll figure it out eventually.
Yeah, definitely. So I feel like some people might be afraid of taking that first step to take the leap. And so I'm wondering, what ingredients do you have or do you think you have that allows you to take that leap over and over again?
I think leap is such a big word. I don't think I'm taking leaps. I think I'm taking steps. Now, it is scary to take a step in the dark, right? Because you don't know what you might step into, or you might fall off a ledge. But once you've taken the step, it's like no take backs. And so sometimes for me, it's just push yourself off a cliff, And now I'm using hyperbolic language. But we're most of the time we're not talking about cliffs. We're not talking about jumping over a pit. We're talking about like upload that post or send that email, right? It's like I'm not a cliff diver, but like I can send an email. Like if I jump off a cliff and it doesn't work, like I'm dead at the bottom. If I send an email and it doesn't work, I just never get a reply. It just doesn't matter. And so I think, yes, some people listening are going to be potentially embarking on much bigger things, right? The leap feels like a leap. But if we just think about the scale of the universe and the enormity of how big everything is, and then we think about how like we want to make a book, the book, it's just not a big deal. It's just not a big deal. So I think thinking about scale, thinking perspective, thinking really objectively about our place in the universe can help us shrink those leaps into steps and to realize that even the biggest leap we've ever taken is truly just like one small step for mankind.
I love that. I love that because I feel like people might get really intimidated by
Of
steps.
course, everything's intimidating. Everything is intimidating until you do it. And then it's just a thing you did.
Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted you. I just feel
Oh,
so
no.
passionately about this. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, of course it's intimidating. You're not weak for being scared. You're not weak for being afraid of something you've never done before. That's scary. It's scary to do something for the first time. It really is. But then it's just a thing you've done. And now in my day to day, I do things that I once did for the first time all the time.
So I did want to talk about your tarot deck that I have one
Oh,
of the
yeah.
self-published versions here. I also have your book, which I got from you at Adobe Max.
Man,
And
back in the
I
day.
feel, yes, back in the day when people were mingling and talking about design, although
Yeah.
it's coming back now.
It is coming back. And you and I were much younger creatives at earlier stages in our journeys. And it's cool to come back in this podcast, which you have a podcast now. So that's fucking cool. And we get to like
Yeah.
reconnect over that. And your tarot deck blew the fuck up. So congrats. And also no surprise because it's very beautiful.
Thank you.
Tarot
Yeah,
decks.
it's been cool. I mean, like, so that's the whole thing about creating your own tarot deck, which is also, I think, a leap. It was definitely a leap for me because at the time I was like really intimidated by tarot. I had been receiving tarot readings for many, many years because it felt like a form of therapy for me.
Yeah, of course.
And it helped me get, kind of like a different perspective on my life situations at the time. And for me, making the cards was very much about learning what these cards meant. And after making it, you're like, oh, that's what that thing means? Or like, oh, like, retrospectively, you might kind of like reflect and think of it in a different way. So I was just wondering, what was your journey like creating your own tarot deck and the inspiration behind it?
So my approach to the OK Tarot deck, like a lot of my work, is really just about transforming pencil and paper, right? My whole thing, my whole ethos, this idea of things are what you make of them, is a guiding principle for me, where I am saying to myself, okay, here's what life handed you. What can you do with it? And life handed me paper and pencil. Life handed me, I worked at a photocopy shop. Life handed me, I worked in an office where I could steal cute pastel colored paper. And the OK Tarot was a exercise in, taking something that I had seen, which was the Rider White deck, and using the limited skills I have, my simplistic illustration and my personal aesthetic taste, which is very simple. I love like a one color line art, and just trying to like put my spin on things. And to me, I really believe that paper and pencil are magic. That's a word that I would use, or I would say it's magical, not magic. There's something very magical about. I mean, what are cards? This is so literal, and I apologies in advance for whoever has to edit this because I'm formulating thoughts as I speak them. But I really felt like, tarot cards are just paper. No matter what deck you have, it's 78 pieces of paper in a box or in a bag or with a rubber band, and everything else that tarot brings to us is about internalizing and intuition, and just, we've all agreed, hey, this means something. We have all agreed, hey, I am going to put my faith into the meaning of this. I'm going to allow this to guide my intuition. And that's very cool. That's a lot of power that we are finding in this very humble material of paper. And I love that shit. I really do. I think that if paper can be so powerful, then we as people can be so powerful, and blah, 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 blah. I love all the metaphors of art and creation. And so I was like, I will make a tarot deck. I will take all the white dudes out. I will take all the religion out because I'm very religion averse, having grown up in a religious community. I saw the Rider White and I was like, what the fuck? Like, how is this representing for what in my mind, when I think of the tarot community, I'm thinking of people who are finding spirituality, finding guidance and intuition from the universe outside of the traditional structures of organized religion. And then you hand me the Rider White Tarot and it's all white dudes and crosses and shit. Like, it's so Catholic. It is shocking to me. So I was like, that's all out. We're pulling all that out. And we're pulling out all depictions of gender, because I am actually a white man. So for me, I look at the Rider White Tarot and I'm like, oh, that's me with my hobo stick. And that's me as a priest. And that's me with a sword in my head. But for everyone else, like, how is that supposed to represent for you? And I was like, rather than create new depictions with new human figures, I completely skipped that. I was like, no. We're just not doing that at all. And in some ways, it makes the deck really like fun and friendly, and we can all find ourselves in it. In some ways, it's a little more complicated because it's a little bit less pictorial and it's a little bit less, in some cases, literal. But that was the fun exercise for me, was just to try it and just to do it and just to see what happens. And it's just paper, right? If it's bad, then we can throw it out. If it's bad, then no one buys it. If it's bad, then it sits in a box. It's like, it just didn't matter that it wasn't going to be perfect. And so I wrote that on the box. I wrote on the very back of the OK Tarot box, it says, it's not perfect, but it's okay. And that is true of the project itself. That is true of me and you as people. That's true of life. And that's what I wanted to do, was I wanted to take paper and make something magical from it, and then let individual users do the rest.
Yeah, I think that's really beautiful because there's so much potential that can be held back from this idea of perfection. And what is perfection that like someone else made up for us, I felt the same way actually with the different tarot cards that I had seen. I like really couldn't relate to any of them because, like you said, it was very like religious and like not even a religion I had grown up with. And also I'm a woman of color. So I'm like looking at all these old white guys on these tarot cards and I'm like, I don't see me in these. And
Yeah.
I think that's really nice that, there's all these different decks coming out now that are representations of all kinds of different people and beliefs, which I don't feel like tarot is strictly religious. I think back in the day, it probably had a tie to like the churches and whatnot. But nowadays, it's just more of another way to access your spirituality in whatever way you define that for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, that's I think the key word is spirituality and not not religion. And so for me, that was the knee-jerk reaction. It's like, this is a tool for spirituality. Why is it so full of religion? How can we separate the symbols of religion, and not just like any religion, but like an oppressive religion that is like famous for stamping out. Sorry, this is a controversial hot take. Cancel the Catholic Church is going to cancel the OK Tarot deck. I think it's the same conversation of like, how could this represent for everyone? Let's find our own way in. And I think you and I were sort of like earlier in the current wave of artist tarot decks, but it's very cool seeing how many are out there. And it's very cool being part of something so much bigger and being part of a community. And I would say that the number one thing that I would say about the OK Tarot was that at no point in the process did I stand up and say, I'm a tarot expert, I know everything. I will be the first person to tell you that I don't know anything about anything. And even I can make a tarot deck. And so, maybe if anyone who's listening has ever thought about, hey, I want to make my own tarot deck, or I want to work on tarot artwork, and maybe I'll make one artwork and then I'll make two, and then I wake up in 3 years and I've made 78 and I print it. Do it. Go for it. I had the idea for the OK Tarot deck in 2016, and I tweeted about it, and I was like, do you guys think I should do this? And people were like, LOL, I don't know, like a shitty tarot deck. I don't know about that. And one person who is very in the tarot community and does a lot of readings for themselves and others said that based on the little, I doodled a few just to be like, I don't know, it could kind of look like this. And they were like, based on what you doodled, like if you had drawn those cards and I was doing a reading for you, I would tell you right now that doing this deck will change your life. And that spooked me, actually. And I was like, okay, I don't want to change my life yet. Things are pretty stable, actually, right now. So that's part of the reason that I sat on that idea for 2 years. It was also laziness. It was fear, and it was not wanting to rock the boat. And then eventually I was looking around, and I was like, okay, there's like a new wave of artist decks happening. If I don't do it now, I don't want to be too late. Or I just knew, I knew I wanted to be part of something at that time. And I was like, let's go. Let's just jump in. And, the OK Tarot for me has been yet another lesson in my life of like, it's okay if you're not an expert. It's okay if you're not the best artist. It's okay if you don't have the budget for fancy production details necessarily. Like, it was just a little Kickstarter project. And I don't know, it really did change my life. It really did find a home within the tarot community, and it continues to reach new people. And after years of self-publishing, Penguin acquired the rights to publish it, and they were able to lower the price, which is the best thing for me as an artist, is to make accessible work that people can easily afford. I've just been super happy lately. I adopted a dog 2 weeks ago, and the joy is so palpable. It's like new dog, Hanukkah, Christmas, New Year's, family in town, like just excited about new creative projects, excited about not working, excited about I had my 10-year anniversary with my husband this month as well. There's so much joy. I feel like I'm being joy bombed, and I'm like actually overwhelmed. I'm like, I kind of like need someone to die just to like temper it. Oh my God, why did I say that?
Well, that's the thing about the
Nobody
human
died.
mind, right? Like everything's going so well, and then like thinking about worst case scenarios just to counteract that.
Yeah, I'm always waiting for the other shoe to drop. Why is that? Why can't I just trust in the universe that maybe there's not another shoe? Maybe I'm already wearing that other shoe. That's how I took this step in the first place. Back to our original metaphors.
So true. You also made It's a Sign Oracle deck recently, right? And it
I
looks like it
did.
was a collaboration with your husband and internet strangers.
Yeah. So in 2022, I had a mail art subscription club where like 800 people signed up to get quarterly packages from me, not knowing what they would be. And in March, I sent a little packet asking people to email me a photo of something, like a cell phone, like something off their phone, of like something that they saw where they felt compelled to take a picture because it felt like a sign from the universe in some way. Whatever it is, it was totally up to you. Just send me a photo and maybe a sentence or two about what, why, when, and I promised I wouldn't share. I would not share the story. And I ended up getting quite a few photos and a lot of stories, and some of them were upbeat and fun and exciting. Like, I was on a trip and I saw this bird and it meant a lot to me. And a lot of the stories were really heavy, really, really heavy. Like, I had a miscarriage and I needed to go to the desert and be alone because I was processing, and that was the most devastating experience of my life. And when I was there, I saw this tree, and this tree reminded me that I am where I need to be. And what I was really struck by was how many stories were similar. What I was really and I read all the stories in one day. I saved them for like a quiet morning, and I let them wash over me. And I was just really, it hit me like, we are all looking to create meaning in our own lives. We are all looking for signs, and we're finding them. Actually, there are signs in there's so many signs in the universe. Actually, there is beauty and magic and love and light and all, whatever we want to call, right? Whatever we want to call that amorphous thing that we may have faith in. It's out there. And so I took those images and I translated them into like an aesthetic language that's a little bit more me, where I reformatted the images and then I printed them out on colored sheets of paper, which I then re-photographed. I wanted to make these digital photos tangible. I wanted to say, hey, this is real. We can hold this. This is paper. This is magic. Here it is. And then I crafted them into these cards with short phrases based on the stories that I was told. And the result is this, I think, like deceptively simple oracle deck, right? Because you don't know what these powerful stories are, and that's, I think, really fun, is like when you're drawing cards, they might really mean something to you, but each card is also imbued with like a very strong real power from someone else's life who to you is a stranger. And so this sign that was so powerful and meaningful to someone in the world now gets to serve as a sign in your life. And it's just like, the overlapping power of it all is wild. And then once again, it's just paper. I like it more than my tarot deck. I'll just say it. I'll just say it out loud. I love the OK Tarot. I think it is really cool and special in a very unique way. But for me, making a deck of signs out of other people's signs, that's like, whew, wow, 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 wow. And so that, I love it so much. And I did make it tarot card size. That was the one point of connection where I was like, no, I like the tall cards. It feels really substantial. And so, going back to our conversation about the leap at the beginning, when I did the OK Tarot deck, that was so intimidating. Where do I get it printed? What size? How do I format the deck and the cards and the templates and the computer, Photoshop, whatever? For this newer deck, it was like, oh yeah, I've done that before. I know how to make a barcode. I know the size. I know how to format the box. So that's a great example of how, being afraid on round one set me up to do round two. And I like round two more. And I think it's a more ambitious, emotional project where, because some of the logistics stuff wasn't as hard, I could dedicate more mental energy on the emotional, creative side. And man, I just love it. I love paper and making things real. And it is such a privilege to be able to facilitate some of that using my little graphic design skills.
So there seems to be a common thread between the power of storytelling through the cards. And I was wondering what the significance of collaborating versus doing solo projects mean to you.
So I often work alone, as a product of just the nature of my work is really confessional, right, and emotional, and I'm emoting these relatable human expressions, and sometimes they're quite dark, and because it's all coming from me, a real person, I think it's safe to grasp onto because you're not the one saying that you want to die. I'm saying it, and you're just double tapping, so that's not as scary. But but on occasion, it's really cool to say, hey, I have tools, resources, and skills. I am acknowledging that though I am a huge dummy, I know how to use the software and I know how to Google to find the right printer and I know how to mail out 500 packages. And I'm going to use all those skills to make something that includes other people. And so I don't always have the chance to do that, or I don't always have the financial resources or the time resources to do that. But with the It's a Sign deck, you know, by design, I was like, I want to make a project that incorporates all those elements. I think it would be really powerful for all of us and really special for me to work on. I'm going to make space to do this. And it was hard. It was a lot of work, but I love it. And I'm glad that I was able to do it. And people whose images were and stories were chosen to be in the deck have sent me messages that were like, and I didn't tell them. Oh, I skipped the best part. I didn't tell anyone who was in and who wasn't. So people found out when they received the deck and flipped through, and people were like, oh my God, that's my dad's flower. Or, oh my God, that's the time that my dog did that thing. And, I've gotten messages since that are just like, thank you so much. Like, or I teared up, or, this really meant so much to me. And I was able to share it with my sister who was also there. Like, those little stories, the little connections that are a result of the things that we're able to make and put out into the world are so cool, right? Because like when I die, it's not going to be like, here lies AdamJK. He made an OK Tarot deck, which sold, 600 copies, blah, blah, blah. It's going to be like, well, I'll probably be cremated, but the thing that we leave behind are those human connections and the ways that people were able to bond, the ways that our work helped facilitate those things. And so I will be nothing. I will be dust. But maybe the person whose really difficult story became a card, and then they took that card and they framed it in their office and it's yellowed with age, and then their daughter finds it in 30 years and on the back they wrote a note. It's like that stuff. Oh, it gives me goosebumps. I love that stuff. That's what I want my legacy to be. That I think is the power of putting faith and belief into these sort of humble materials. That is just the special magical goop of like being alive and ascribing meaning to things, and it's so
Do you
cool.
assign meaning to things? Like, do you see things out in the world and you're like, that means that to me?
Yes, absolutely. I am that person. That's really my relationship to spirituality now. I grew up Orthodox Jewish, so I was very entrenched in a religious environment and raised with a certain type of faith that I didn't question for a long time. For a long time, I was like, oh yeah, God is this, and we can't eat pigs, and this is what we do, and we pray this many times a day. And as I got older, I was able to make decisions for myself and realize that for me, spirituality is found in different environments and different things, different experiences, different people, different relationships. And the older I get, the more and more I believe in the transformational power of love. And love has, there's so many forms of love. But the version of love that for me I connect with the most is not being nice, but being like really kind, and the different ways that kindness can exist. And my favorite way is it's like just little gifts, the sentimentality of objects. A keychain can be a sign, a sticker on a water bottle can be a sign. These short phrases that might be sort of corny on like your auntie's fridge magnet. But then one day you're having like a small nervous breakdown and you go to the fridge to like eat something in case that helps. And instead you read the fridge magnet and you're like, oh, this hits different today. To me, that's incredible. And the person that made that fridge magnet, a beautiful soul. And so hopefully I made it because I want the little like credit in heaven for like saving you on that day. I want to make the fridge magnet that like stops you from killing yourself. That sounds so dark. So
it's a ray of hope.
I've said it before. Yeah, you know what? Because I have been like absolutely short circuiting, and then just seen like, you know, oh, someone sent me a postcard and it's like a picture of like downtown St. Louis, and I'm like, oh, there's so much hope for me. I've never been to St. Louis yet. You know, it's like these things are so dumb, but in the moment can be so powerful. You know,
and meaningful, like whatever way you want to, like someone can look at that same picture and think something else.
Yeah. It's all about how we feel. It's all about what we intuit from an experience. And coming back to tarot cards, that's exactly what we're talking about. Because a tarot card and a postcard are both cardstock, right? It's 4-color printing on like 100 pounds stock, whatever, 100. Whatever, you know what I mean? It's like, ultimately, it's very similar. Ultimately, Harry Potter and the Bible are both printed on paper. We can't use Harry Potter for anything anymore. God damn it. I just think that, you know, it's not about the materials. It's about the power that we give them and the way that we let them guide our intuition.
So at the core of your work, I feel like there is a combination between self-help and art. And I was wondering, is there's a version of you that's making it for like a younger version of yourself? All right, so if you've been wanting to create your tarot or oracle deck, take this as a sign that you are meant to create it. And I've got just the thing for you. The Create Your Deck Club. A program to take you from start to finish from the entire deck creation process. As someone who's made 4 decks by now, from self-published to a Kickstarter to working within the traditional publishing industry with a literary agent and editors, I have the full rundown of what it takes to make your deck, beyond creating the artwork and writing the text. Admittedly, when I made my first deck, it was overwhelming, and I had to learn things the hard way because I had never done it before. But luckily for you, I've outlined everything I've learned about the creation process in this course that will fully support you along the way. Whether you want to self-publish or work with a traditional publisher to get your deck out there into the world, this program has got you completely covered. And not only that, you'll be supported in a like-minded community of other deck creators who could be going through similar challenges. Whether it's finding the right printer to having accountability with the other members in the club. You don't have to do this alone. And the world will benefit from your deck, helping other people tune into their divine wisdom through your channeled creation. No matter where you are, whether you just have an idea or you've already started creating your deck, to having finished your deck and ready to take it to the next level, the Create Your Deck Club has you covered. So, what are you waiting for? Head over to createyourdeck.club to join and kickstart your deck creation process now.
I often think about my work as sort of like a breadcrumb trail for myself and others to find our way back. You know, in those moments when we start to lose our shit, in those moments when you're so overwhelmed with emotion that logic goes out the window, because we're all smart, right? I'm not like a wellness guru genius. I'm not emotionally stable 24/7, but there are moments when I am, and those are the moments when I'm creating art or reminders or messages or tokens that can help me get back to where I need to get back to, right? It's like when you save your game a few times before you go fight like a really difficult boss. It's like, okay, well, if I die, I can just go back to my save file. It's like maybe some of the work I'm putting out there is the save file that says, hey, 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 no, no, no. At this time, you knew all these things. This was the emotional intelligence you had gained by that moment. And this is your new foundation. We are not going to rock bottom. We are now like 10 flights of stairs up. You don't have to start at the floor anymore. And I love that I have been able to grow with people, that I've had, readers and fans come along on the journey with me, from being a teenager on Tumblr to, being a 34-year-old on Tumblr. I'm still
Yeah.
on Tumblr.
Tumblr's still a thing?
Tumblr's a thing, baby.
All
I mean,
right.
the internet, I feel, is so toxic in so many ways that it really is about finding these like smaller pockets of community and just like cozying up in them. Because if you just try to like, raw dog all of Twitter, it's gonna hurt. I am so sorry for saying
It
raw dog
it can
Twitter.
be
It
overwhelming for
feels
sure.
Twitter feels like going into like a crowded airport in like the second month of COVID and no one's wearing a mask. Like Twitter feels like April 2020 at like Six Flags.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know what that means. I just mean that it's like overwhelming. It's overwhelming and like I don't trust anybody and like I feel like I'm gonna die. And so we need our like small, safe, fun pockets of people that maybe we don't need people to echo our sentiments back. We don't need to be only amongst people who are exactly like us, but people who maybe have a commonality, who share some amount of interests, who are passionate about, whatever the crux of that community is. And that can be a really cool, fun thing about the internet that I still love and that still helps me, that still helps, I don't know, tether
Yeah,
me to something bigger than myself in a fun community way.
definitely. If there were to be any advice that you would give to your younger self, what would it be?
Don't kill yourself.
Straightforward.
Yeah, pretty on the nose. Hey, younger Adam, don't kill yourself, because in fact a lot of really awesome things are coming, and love is real and it will change your entire life. And it starts not necessarily with romantic love, but with the love that we have for ourselves and our families, our chosen families, the people that we let into our lives, the love that we put into our work, the breadcrumb trails that we put out into the world that might eventually attract a partner for life, or a partner for a decade, or a partner for 3 years that helps us see ourselves in a new way, helps us grow and transform in the ways that we are meant to or could be meant to. I started with the really scary negative, but I think what I'm actually trying to say is, hey, love is real. Love is
Love is
actually
real.
real. It's not just like a thing from songs. It's a real thing. And so if maybe you haven't felt all kinds of it yet, or maybe if the kind of love that you were raised on is ringing false, if you're processing trauma, or there's so many reasons why we might not be able to internalize that feeling of love. But love is real and it's out there and it will change you and it will change everything. And belief in that, and participating in it, magnifying it for others, sharing it with others, will change absolutely everything. Will open so many doors, so many pathways.
Do you feel like going through these darker moments have given you this optimism?
Yes. Oh my God, yes. I mean, this is like what we were talking about at the beginning. Taking one step proves that taking one step won't kill you. So then you can take a second step and a third step and a fourth step. And going through really dark moments, surviving really hard shit, proves to you that you can. And not just that you can and it was a fluke, but that like, no, like there was some sort of power in you that enabled you to get through this. And I will also say that in my case, going through a really particularly dark time in my early 20s taught me a kind of empathy that I don't know where else I would have gotten it from. You know, some people are more empathetic than others. I was already pretty empathetic, but I learned a new form of empathy for people experiencing mental illness and mental health issues, whether genetic, lifelong, temporary, whatever. And it informed my entire creative practice. It shifted the direction of what I was doing from sort of like graphic design, in-house sort of employee, you know, making things to sell things, to someone who uses their tools, skills, and newfound empathy and trust in their own voice and belief that they can get through a hard thing and find love and magnify love, informed my entire practice. The last 10 years has been books and journals and interactive stationery and reminders and knickknacks and uplifting and affirming things, through my, you know, filtered through my jaded sort of blunt voice that maybe connects with people who are currently in the dark place. And yeah, all of that has come together to help me build a life of like trying to help other people while really helping myself, my family, the people that I love. It is so cool to survive the hard thing, make art out of it, and then have that art generate enough income for yourself that you can care for your family. Holy shit, right? We were not told that you could live from art. In fact, we were told that you can't. And so to prove that wrong is really, really, really cool. And for anyone who's listening who has a sort of creative passion, you know, we're not talking about being a millionaire. Like, I'm not a millionaire, but I am happy.
And you can't put a price on that. So part of taking the leap is you moved, right? From New York to Hawaii, and is that,
Yeah,
part of this happiness?
it is. You know, I think in a very literal sense to leave a busy, dirty city and move to a place like Honolulu, which is beautiful and there's trees and nature, really cool, really beautiful. The flip side of that is that I don't like warm weather. I'm not a beach person. I'm from Canada and I love New York and I thought I would die there. So I didn't plan to move here. But I fell in love with a person who's from Hawaii. So we moved home and take care of his family. And this, I mean, I didn't see this for me. It wasn't in the cards, Grace. It wasn't there. I didn't see it. But I have made it through the really hard transition part. And now I'm in I have like trees in the yard and a dog part. And so I miss being in a city like New York where everyone is also a psychopath, right? Like, I am a very special kind of Jewish brain. I miss being in a place where I make sense. Here, it's like, is this man lost? Like, are you trying to find your way back to like your hotel in Waikiki? Like, do you need help? But it's cool. It's cool to be in a new place. And more so than just moving, I also, I used the move as a moment to create meaningful change in my life by changing up my systems of care, by changing my medications, by getting a new psychiatrist, therapist. Like, at any point in time in your own life, anyone's life, we can say, okay, enough's enough. Like, let's make some changes. And I did that. I was like, shit is so, like, there's so much upheaval anyway. What's a little bit more? You know, like, at that point, when you've already jumped off the cliff and you're sort of like just in the air traveling down, let's forget the cliff. When you've already taken a step, what's another 2 steps? What's another 5 steps? You know, maybe you sprint. Maybe we sprint for a minute and we go like 20 steps and maybe that's okay. It's new year, new me energy. I just cut off a 1.5 feet of hair growth that I had been growing all of the pandemic. And once again, I'm saying, let's sprint. Let's take a bunch of steps. Like, once again, I am the fool. I got my apple in the little sack over my shoulder. I got my ignorance is bliss hat on, and we are just gonna go for it and see. And see. We're just gonna see.
You know, that reminds me that when I was studying abroad, we went cliff diving
No.
in Italy. Yeah. And I didn't really know how to swim, but I decided to jump off this cliff. And I remember it being one of the most terrifying things I've ever done because it was like 3 stories high and my heart dropped. It was just like you literally walk off a cliff and
Yeah.
you're supposed to like get in this straight pencil, position, which I did not because you just walk off a cliff. And I just remember in the middle of the transition from dropping into the water, my heart just stopped and I was like, I'm never fucking doing this ever again. And then I hit the water, not knowing if I would make it because I wasn't sure, about my swimming skills. But I floated to the top, I broke the surface, and I have the pictures to prove it. But the thing about that is like just being scared and doing it anyway. And then
Yeah.
once you make it on the other side, you're like, I can do that. Like I can make this. I'm stronger than I think.
Yeah. That's how did you save that story for this long into the episode? That should have been the opening of this. Oh, Adam said cliff dive. P.S. I've done that. That's crazy. You are so brave. Holy shit.
Thank
I
you.
will
I,
I will
I
never
totally
do that.
forgot actually until you said transition from like when you jump off to when you hit the water. And by the way, like had a huge bruise on the back of my leg from the
Oh,
impact of hitting the water.
yeah.
But
That
like people don't talk about the transition part, because it's like it's probably not even that long, but it felt like forever.
oh, that's wild, right? Yeah, we think about maybe that's like a whole other episode, right? We think about the jump, we think about the landing, but what about those seconds in between and the knowledge gained and the feelings felt in those seconds? Oh, that's scary. I'm like heebie-jeebie. I'm like, when your arms just hurt and you feel like you can feel all your blood pumping through your veins. That's how I feel right now.
Yeah.
Oh,
So this was wonderful, and I'd love to wrap up our conversation with some rapid fire questions. Do
okay.
you know what your sun, moon, rising is?
I'm a Libra sun, Aquarius moon. I forget my rising.
Alrighty.
It might be Cancer. I forget.
I feel like that all makes sense.
Thank you.
Um, do you have any favorite rituals?
I love to wake up and immediately look at my phone and answer work emails. I find that that's really healthy.
You don't really do that every day.
I do look at my phone more than I should. I just bought one of these. This I don't want to say the brand name. It's not an ad. I bought one of these like meditation alarm clocks that's like for leaving your phone downstairs, and it costs like $100 fucking. I bought it off an Instagram ad, and I haven't set it up yet. It's been in my office for 3 weeks. But in the
Amazing.
new year, I'm going to be doing sleepy time meditations, and I'm not going to look at my phone. I'm going to be so healthy and physically fit, and I'm not going to use food or weed as coping mechanisms anymore. And I'm also going to become really good at drawing, and yeah, my whole life's going to change.
Do you have rituals when you get into like your creative space, like writing or anything like that?
Well, I think this year the ritual has been like hit the bong and then like like the rituals haven't been healthy. They've just been super fun. Um, I think that a lot of the times it's like you got to feel it first, right? For me, my creative work is not really about execution as much as concept. So there's a lot of thinking. I'm always back in my mind. I'm just always thinking, thinking, thinking. And then when there's a strong emotion that starts to settle into some sort of phrase or something more graspable, then it's like, okay, well, what could that be? And I'm looking beyond my webcam right now at the wall, and it's like, well, sometimes it's a keychain, and sometimes it's a ribbon, and sometimes it's a Christmas ornament, and sometimes it's just like a note that I wrote to myself, and then sometimes it's a sticker, sometimes it's an enamel pin. So I don't always know. I try, I think graphic design is all about like, what's the end product? Work backwards, build out your parameters. But with art, it's so much more about like, what do you actually want to say? right? What, not how are you communicating, but what are you communicating? And so the process for me is really just like think and feel. And sometimes that's bad for business because you haven't made anything in a while, but you also don't want to make garbage. So giving yourself time and space to think and feel. And sometimes that looks like taking a walk. Sometimes that looks like watching like a really bad reality TV show or just doing something totally opposite from work. I wish
Yeah.
I had like a clear, good answer. I wish I was like, yes, I do my morning pages and then I have a cup of coffee and then I walk my dog and then I come home and I sharpen my pencil and then I rub my lucky stone. But no, I don't have that. I don't even
I
have a
mean, it's
lucky stone.
not very realistic, right?
For
To
some people,
like keep
maybe
that up.
it
I
is,
mean,
but
yeah, that's true. Maybe.
it hasn't been for me. And I will say that I'm like relatively successful at what I do. So perhaps we don't need to be evolved beings in order to make art. It might help. But if you're listening and you're like, I'm not evolved, I'm a dumb dummy dumb, that's okay too. It's allowed. You're still allowed to make art.
All right, so would you like to end our conversation by pulling some cards?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any like questions or a,
Yeah.
an
Yeah. I
intention?
mean, we're about to enter the new year. So I would love like I don't know, is there do the cards have something I often think I know what I think I know what I want. And then I'm often wrong. I think I know what I want and then I'm wrong. I wonder if we might draw a card that helps give me some sense of guidance or like a watch out or like a something to be aware of, something that you might not have considered yet as you step forward into the new year and really try to make these meaningful life changes about as far as like relationships and health and that sort of thing.
Yeah, totally. So I'm shuffling the cards.
Yes,
And
cards. Will I be healthy? Will I stop stress eating? Cards, please. You're gonna somehow draw like the weed and pizza card that doesn't exist. The deck's gonna be like, "Fuck you, bitch."
it's amazing.
And while you're
So,
drawing the cards, I'm gonna squish my face like this in case the video footage is ever used.
have you been waiting on something to wrap up for you to start something else? Like any decisions that you wanted to make?
I think I am just waiting for like the holiday season to be through. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm getting the Hanged Woman reversed, and that's why I asked that because usually there's some sort of delay or sense of sacrifice. But since
Mm.
it's reversed, it's kind of like those things that were holding you back. It's kind of like a green light to go ahead and, maybe do those things that you've been waiting on. The Queen of Pentacles is a very nurturing and has a motherly energy. And so I feel like from what you were talking about earlier with these new routines that you're having for yourself, like, having a trainer and really caring for your health, well being, and fitness, that's like another way of, I mean, it's obviously a way of caring for yourself, but like really acting as that maternal figure,
Mm.
that's like really caring for yourself on the level of like making sure that your needs are met and not in a way, like making sure you're getting your needs met for your best interests and not for anyone else's like agenda or
Mm.
anything like that. Nine of Wands reverse, it can indicate you're almost at the end of something. So the end of a transition, about to start at the end of a new chapter kind of thing. And
Yeah.
I think that like really speaks to like, you were talking about this transition from your move and like getting used to being in Hawaii and like it's almost like an acceptance into this passage of new life and
Yeah.
like creating the passageway for you to be that like nurturing presence for yourself and that you're not like relying on other people to be that for you.
Cool. Yeah. And there are some things that we didn't talk about in this episode that I think these cards are really reflecting and affirming. So it's, yeah, that's cool.
Like
I think, and
what?
um, how much time do we have? I'm ending my business. I'm closing my business.
Oh my
I'm
God.
like
I didn't know
stopping my
that.
brand. I'm shutting down my e-commerce, and I'm just like taking stuff off my plate so I can focus on myself and being healthy
I
and
love that for
happy.
you.
So I feel like that's what we're talking about here is like I am shedding some of the shackles that I created for myself. I'm letting go of some of the ego that I placed in the work stuff. And I'm saying, no, 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 like we need to be healthy or we will suffer and have physical pain for decades to come. So I'm being, yeah, I'm really like looking out for my truest needs in the most literal sort of immediate sense. And so this does really feel like the end of one thing and the start of the next.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
when I say I love that for you, I mean I love that you're making these decisions for yourself in your best interest
Yeah.
and not
Yeah.
like tying it to, something you think you have to do.
Totally. I mean, it is a real privilege and a luxury to say, "Hey, I do this thing that makes money that I use to live, but I am in a position to say, "Hey, you know what? You worked so hard that you can now afford to take some of that work off your plate and work a little bit less in the service of really caring for your physical health, your mental health." Um, I'm someone who gets so much of their satisfaction from working really hard. And now I'm saying, hey, can we unlearn that? Can we really focus on these things that matter for health and happiness long term? To go from someone who was like, well, I'm probably not going to live very long anyway, so let me just like burn, 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 grind, 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 to be like, oh fuck, I got to live until like 80 or something. So I am not even at the halfway point. How instead do I set myself up for long term health? That's where I'm at. So I love it too, and I want it. I want it so bad. I want to really do and accomplish this thing. And so some of us have like a dream and we keep it a secret because we're afraid people might think it's dumb, or we're afraid that like we might jinx it, or we're afraid that we might fail right away and everyone will know we failed because we said we wanted to do it. I'm talking about the dream. I'm making it not a secret, and I'm allowing myself the grace to like maybe fail or fuck up along the way or fall off the wagon and get back on, but I'm not keeping it a secret because accountability to ourselves and with our loved ones is super helpful. And yeah, I'm trying to make things real. I think I used to define the word manifest wrong. I used to think about manifesting as like, oh yeah, you just like want something really bad and then it can materialize. And now I'm like, no, no, manifesting is like creating space. It's like clearing space. It's like welcoming things in. It's taking steps. It's seeing a door open and walking through that door before it has a chance to close again. Like, it is more proactive than I thought. And
Yeah.
so
And it's also like you're
I'm in
attracting
there.
new opportunities to you by
Yeah.
clearing the space.
You
So that's
right. If there's no
also
space,
manifestation.
if you don't listen to your voicemails, you will run out of voicemails, right?
I
And then
don't
people
listen to
call
my
you.
voicemails.
I
My
know, but
entire inbox is full.
yeah, empty your inbox so that you can get new voicemails because the universe is calling. It's
That
the
is
universe
super
is not going to
exciting.
call more than 2 or 3 times per year, so you got to be ready. Better
Or they're
yet, just pick
sending me
up the
like
phone when it rings.
a very disruptive text message if you're not listening to the messages.
Oh,
Yeah. So thank you so much for
thanks
hopping
for having
on
me. Thanks for
and
having me on this
sharing.
podcast.
Yeah. You're my very first guest. So, you know,
It only
we're
gets better from here, listeners. Don't forget to like and subscribe. If you liked what you heard, please give Grace's podcast 5 stars on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your. Sorry, I know you probably want to say that better.
you you know what? You need to be my mascot.
I am willing to put on a goofy costume and just cheer people on. I I do really believe in the potential of everyone and everything. And if there's one thing you take away from me on this episode, it's if I can do this, you can do this. If I can let go of fear, you can let go of fear. And you might just be really, 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 really surprised at what the universe has in store for you. Because I have been completely shocked, and I'm just so grateful.
Yeah, so much gratitude, so much knowledge. I love that you're able to share your wisdom in like a way that everyone can get, you know, like everyone knows what it feels like to have those dark moments. But being able to transform those dark moments into moments of inspiration that can help heal yourself, versions of yourself, but also like the people around you, it's really a ripple effect. And I feel like, you know, your work speaks to so many people because they've been there before and they're going through those moments that you've been through too. So it's really a gift that you're sharing with us. And so I just really want to acknowledge you and your light and everything that you're doing, and that I'm really excited for you and your next adventure, your next full moment, you know, and it's like cycles of change, inspiration, you know, as we keep evolving and growing. So thank you so much, Adam.
Thank you. I can't wait to see who's on your next episode. I guess I'll have to like and subscribe to find out.
Yes, please do. Okay, thank you so much, and chat soon.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks so much for tuning in to today's episode with AdamJK. So grateful for Adam's raw honesty, humor, and his vulnerability in sharing a glimpse of his new beginning. Take this episode as an invitation to connect to the Fool card and see if you can activate that spontaneous side of yourself that is willing to take risks, even if you are uncertain of what's on the other side. Make sure to tell us about your experience by writing into the show or leaving a voice message on Spotify. And now we're going to wrap up this episode with the giveaway details that I mentioned at the beginning of the show. To enter the giveaway, you must leave a podcast review. Screenshot your review and email it to graced@mysticmondays.com. That's GRACED @mysticmondays.com. If you want additional entries to win the OK Tarot deck, you can follow us on social media and get the complete rules over at Mystic Mondays and at grace.duong. Also, each follow, like, comment, and subscribe on Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, and TikTok will be another way to enter to win the OK Tarot deck, since we'll be checking all of those platforms for all of the entries to win. We will be picking winners on Monday, April 24th at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. Since the Graced podcast is completely new, I so appreciate your support in sharing these episodes, liking these episodes, and subscribing to the podcast. Sending you so much grace today and every day.